Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein has pulled the trigger on the vote recount process tonight. She beat the deadline to get her request in for Wisconsin, and that may be only the beginning. Here's correspondent Rich Edson.
In Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, she finished fourth, losing by millions of votes. And in those three states, Green Party candidate Jill Stein wants a recount. She claims the cause of furthering democracy and election integrity in her effort, and denies she's trying to deliver the White House to Hillary Clinton.
We do not have a smoking gun that shows that there was, beyond a doubt, vote fraud going on here. But let me say, we do not need to prove that there was fraud in order to justify a voting system that is secure and that we have confidence in.
Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by about 70,000 votes, Wisconsin by fewer than 30,000. He's up in Michigan by about 10,000 votes. If recounts were to award Clinton electors in these states, she'd win the White House.
I'll simply say this much. Soros and Stein are two tribal names you can trust. That you can trust in terms of destabilizing the American governmental process and the American electoral process in the interest of helping the same kinds of forces that Mr. Soros is involved with in terms of Black Lives Matter, MoveOn.org, in terms of his Open Society initiative, and so forth and so on. The fact of the matter is that this entire thing smells. It's very clear that when Jill Stein can suddenly raise this kind of money, that there is someone other than her Green Party grassroots supporters that is behind this effort. This can only help the forces that are trying to delegitimize this election.
There are increasing concerns tonight that terrorists may want to strike here in the U.S. during the presidential transition.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Since America last witnessed a presidential transition, the terror threat has metastasized, with dozens of new Islamic militant groups at large, and the most audacious of them, ISIS, reaching well beyond Syria and Iraq. Now, as the next transfer of power in Washington approaches, analysts say the U.S. intelligence community is on edge, bracing for terrorists and other U.S. adversaries eager to make their mark.
They want to test the administration's outgoing and incoming to see what kind of resolve we'll have, to learn whether we're going to be feckless or whether we're going to go toe-to-toe with the enemy. And so the period is sort of ripe for whether they're political events, strategic events, or simple tactical terrorist events.
President Obama has said the U.S. counterterrorism apparatus is stronger than ever.
We've seen much better cooperation between the FBI, state governments, local governments.
But law enforcement veterans say the next weeks and months present acute concern.
The security is now going to be heightened to the highest limit you could possibly imagine until and maybe a little bit after January 20th.
4 inmates cutting through the bars and rappelling from a second-story window. 2 are back in custody, but 2 are still on the loose.
Tonight, the manhunt for 2 dangerous fugitives on the run after a daring jailbreak in San Jose, California.
We will find these 2. Any person who is aiding and abetting in their escape will attempt to prosecute.
Sheriff's deputies and police now urgently scouring the area, hunting down Rogelio Chavez and LaRon Campbell, 2 of 4 inmates who escaped from Santa Clara County Jail late Wednesday night. Their accomplices were quickly nabbed. Details of the dramatic escape now emerging. The inmates cut through the bars of their cell window, leaving behind a makeshift rope what appears to be bed sheets dangling from the second story of the building. Investigators still haven't found any tools that the inmates may have used to break out.
The fact that these bars were cut the way they were, it wasn't something that they just, thought of in a minute. It's something that probably took some previous planning.
There were no surveillance cameras covering the outside of the older wing of the jail that housed the inmates. Police think that they're still in the area. Tonight, authorities investigating whether the group had outside help with their escape.
Turkey's president has warned the European Union that he will open his country's borders to allow hundreds of thousands of refugees into Europe. He says Europe has failed to fulfill its side of a refugee deal under which Turkey would stop the flow of people in return for concessions that included accelerated membership talks. On Thursday, the European Parliament recommended freezing talks on Turkey's accession. The lawmakers said Ankara's response to July's failed coup was at odds with European values. Speaking in Istanbul earlier, President Erdogan gave this response.
You know about this vote in the European Parliament. They're not honest. They were never honest. They never kept their promises. They did not help us with the refugee crisis. They didn't do anything when bodies washed ashore. When you saw 50,000 people on your borders, you were scared. You panicked. You asked yourselves, what would we do if Turkey opens the borders to the refugees? Look, I'm being very clear. If you keep moving on like this, we will open the borders to the refugees.
All right, a new report from the Washington Free Beacon indicates that Iran is smuggling advanced weapons to Hezbollah and terrorists in Syria on commercial airliners. This after the Obama administration approved Airbus and Boeing to sell commercial planes to Iran. We reached out to the administration, and a senior official tells Fox, and I quote, under the Iran deal, the United States committed to license the export of certain commercial passenger aircraft to Iran. These licenses contain strict conditions to ensure that the planes will be used exclusively for commercial passenger use and cannot be resold or transferred to a designated entity.
And we've got real consternation on the Hill. We've got Hill sources today saying that the Obama administration is turning a blind eye to all these warning flags here.
Meanwhile, North Korea seems to be making plans for the next U.S. administration. The regime has called itself a nuclear state several times. This in an apparent bid for dialogue with Washington.
North Korea continues to call itself a nuclear state, as if in preparation, experts say, for a change of government in the United States. The North's official Rodong Sinmun said Friday Pyongyang's possession of nuclear weapons is a fact upon which the incoming Trump administration should base its North Korea policy. A day after Trump was elected, the newspaper reported Pyongyang would not give up its nuclear ambitions, saying Washington's hope for the regime's denuclearization was a delusion. In the following week, Pyongyang said the U.S. could not deny the fact that North Korea had risen to become a strong nuclear state.
The country's defense ministry is mulling to adopt a THAAD missile system. According to Japan's Kyoto News, the defense ministry has decided to set up a special committee to discuss the possible deployment of a terminal high-altitude area defense system in the near future. One likely location is Guam, where Japanese Defense Minister Tomomi Inada is scheduled to visit on December the 11th. Japan's intentions of adopting a THAAD system can be traced back to 2009, right after the U.S. first deployed the system. And according to Japan's domestic media, setting up a special committee could speed up the deployment of the missile defense system as early as the year 2018.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has denounced Russia's deployment of missile systems on islands claimed by Japan. But he pledged to push forward with efforts to resolve the territorial issue when he meets next month with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Abe commented on a report that appeared in Russian media on Tuesday. It says that advanced surface-to-ship missile systems had been installed on 2 of 4 Russian-held islands. The government maintains the islands were illegally occupied after World War II. The dispute has prevented Tokyo and Moscow from signing a peace treaty, a step that was never taken after the end of the war.
The 4 islands are an inherent part of Japan's territory. Through a diplomatic channel, the Japanese government has launched a protest with Russia. Their military expansion with a missile deployment on the islands is incompatible with our stance and is deplorable.
The missile system presents a diplomatic headache weeks before Putin is due to visit Japan.
The leader of the communist revolution and the former president of Cuba, Fidel Castro, has died at the age of 90. Castro led Cuba for almost half a century. He built a communist state on the doorstep of the United States and defied numerous attempts to overthrow him. He handed power over to his brother, Raúl, in 2008.
Veterans who have fought for Americans' freedoms abroad are answering the call at home, ready to stand for Standing Rock. Hundreds of America's bravest men and women are set to deploy to the Standing Rock Indian Reservation in North Dakota, joining in protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline. In a planned event in the coming weeks, service members from all 5 branches of the U.S. military are calling upon fellow veterans to exercise their constitutional right to assemble as a peaceful, unarmed militia. Those who join the movement plan to defend the water protectors from assault at the hands of militarized police force and Dakota Access Pipeline security. Veterans Wesley Clark Jr. and Michael Wood Jr. are helping lead the initiative. Clark says that they are hoping for a turnout of 500 veterans, but if they only have 20 or 30, then that's what God will have provided. Wood, who is also a retired police officer, says that they must stand up for the oppressed, adding that it doesn't matter if you are a libertarian or a conservative or a progressive, this is everyone's fight. The peaceful protest turned violent in recent days. Protesters were shot with water cannons, pepper spray, tear gas, and rubber bullets. More than 300 people were reportedly injured in the clash. Soaked by water, a number of protesters were treated for hypothermia in the sub-freezing temperatures. Jade Emilio Snell, a veteran of the Marine Corps, says that he's watched people attacked, fighting for what they believe in. He says that as a veteran, he took an oath to not just protect Americans in foreign countries, but inside of it too.
Now Britons have held a rally in London demanding action to speed up the process of leaving the European Union.
We are here to remind our elected representatives that the country voted to leave. Get on with it.
Because I feel that my democratic rights are being trampled on by the minority of people who did not vote for Brexit. The minority of people voted to stay in Europe.
The MPs are our public servants. They work for us. They were elected by the people to serve the people, and they need to realise and respect the wishes of the people, and we want our Brexit.
According to the China Earthquake Network Center, the epicenter is at Akto County in the Kazilsu-Kurikudzi Autonomous Prefecture. 90% of the prefecture's territory are mountainous areas. An expert says it's located in an earthquake-prone zone.
All the red dots here show where earthquakes have happened before. A long time ago, a magnitude 8.25 quake hit our tucks. In 1985, a magnitude 7.1 quake struck here. In 2008, a magnitude 6.8 quake occurred on the China and Kyrgyzstan border. This time, it had a magnitude of 6.7. We estimate that about 40,000 people were within the perimeter of the tremor, measuring magnitude 6 or above this time.
Amateur video footage from Friday's earthquake has emerged showing the level of intensity and power. Homes in Akto County in Xinjiang were badly shaken. Tremors were also felt in the neighboring Kashgar Prefecture, which is about 170 kilometers away from the epicenter. Customers at a local restaurant in that prefecture can be seen scurrying for safety. The overhead signs swung for more than 10 seconds.
There's no force of nature quite like an earthquake. They shake up our buildings and they can cause landslides or tsunamis that wash away whole towns. And when they're strong enough, they can redraw whole maps. During the recent quakes in New Zealand, one side of a fault line pushed up against the other, lifting parts of the coastline up out of the ocean. They're now almost 20 feet higher in places. Earthquakes can also cause entire islands to appear. In 2013, shaking in Pakistan disturbed pockets of natural gas and methane, which bubbled to the surface. The gas pushed what used to be the seafloor up into an island. These bubble islands tend to be temporary. They disappear over the course of months or years as the gas underneath them escapes. But a big enough earthquake can change the whole planet. When overlapping tectonic plates triggered the 2011 quake in the Pacific Ocean, part of the Japanese island of Honshu moved several feet east. It had a subtle effect on the rest of the world too. The quake moved so much mass that the Earth's axis of rotation, the point it's balanced around as it spins, changed by more than 6 inches.
Rising sea levels are chewing away at the sand on Miami Beach, and guess what? Miami isn't alone. After Hurricane Matthew, Atlantic coast counties from the Space Coast to the Georgia line were actually assessing a lot of lost sand. Now, the problem's been growing for quite some time. From 1996 to 2015, high and low tides at Miami Beach rose about 4.2 inches, and those high sea levels erode beaches, and they increase the danger of storm surge. The entire state of Florida is faced with a similar dilemma. The state has 495 replenishing projects underway, with more than $1 billion spent so far to keep sand on Florida's famous beaches.
There's a new popular decorative set putting a very modern spin on the traditional nativity display. It's called the Hipster Nativity Set. Yes, it is a thing.
That is a thing.
A modern take on the traditional nativity scene. It's got wise men on segways bearing gifts from Amazon Prime, as well as a latte drinking Mary and a man bun sporting Joseph taking a selfie with baby Jesus.
She has leather pants on. Perfect.
Orders are through the roof for this thing.
This is
They're
unreal.
selling 500 of these a day.